Food is important, perhaps one of the most important things to life. And that's why we're starting off the show with this all-important conversation, food, agriculture, the whole value chain. And yes, we're joined on the program by Buffy Okeke-Ojudu, who's the CEO of Zebra Agro Industries. Good morning, and welcome to the program.
Morning, and thank you for having me.
You operate in like the most important sector, so there's a security area of things, and then I think food even ranks higher than security, because whatever the case, you need to put food in your stomach for you think or do anything, right? And I just want to start with a statement from one of the governors in Nigeria that said that Nigeria is rich in agriculture, does not have a business with poverty. And that's almost like cliche. Nigeria is rich in crude oil, doesn't have a business with poverty. Hey, Nigeria is rich in human resources, doesn't have a business with poverty or leadership challenges. So this is something we hear time and again. Yeah, we have potential. We're such a great nation, arable land. But you know, when you come to the brass tacks, it's not what it ought to be. So what is a missing link for you? And I want to start by asking you to respond to that age-long thing around someone is trying to attack Nigeria's food, food resources. So it's a targeted thing to destabilize Nigeria. Is that defeatist? Because yes, someone would always try to attack you.
True. So I don't even think that it's as much someone trying to attack us as it is we not creating systems that work with our natural way of doing things. So like many sub-Saharan African countries and like other sectors in Nigeria, we have adopted a model from other countries and applied it here. So industrialized agriculture, centralized processing facilities, large silos, massive silos. But in truth, over 70% of our people are involved in agriculture, of which over 80% are smallholder farmers. So the model that would work for us is a more decentralized model, smaller, closer to the places where the production is happening. If you have large units of storage or processing around the major townships, how is the smallholder farmer supposed to get it there? How is he supposed to move his 1 or 2 bags, either to store or to sell? We talk a lot about our production problem, which, yes, insecurity affects that as well. Yield per hectare, yes, there's that. But in truth, what we produce, a significant portion of that rots away anyways. Anywhere between 40 and 60%, some say 70, depending on the commodity. So let's even get to a point where what we're even producing makes it to the market. And the way to do that is to create smaller infrastructure, local governments, town by town, where production is happening, closer to the farmer.
I remember that during the previous administration, there was a huge rice pyramid in Abuja, obviously for optics largely, just so that we're producing a lot. But what has become of that today? So I think there's the need to just show that something is happening on the one hand. Government just wants to show something without maybe necessarily sitting down and saying, let us really critically think through the process. And I think you said it, that we don't maybe look for what works for us. We're not trying to use what works for us. So if 7 out of 10 of us is a farmer, it means that none of us should be hungry in that sense.
Exactly.
Because at least one of the 7 will have more than enough to share with the other 3, and naturally food should go around. So maybe we should break it down further, right? So you have a place like Kaduna that produces corn. There are tomato industries in Kaduna as well. But there was a time that tomato was really out of reach. You have rice being produced in Nigeria in large quantity. And the price of rice has been beyond reach. Now it's coming down.
It's coming down because of importation.
Yeah. So again, I want us to, troubleshoot this, because there's a Ministry of Agriculture. The states also have their ministries of agriculture. So is it a mismatch in terms of policy or what?
I think so. You know, we place a lot of burden on governments in Nigeria, and we assume that government will solve all the problems. You look at the West. Not to say that the West is the best model, but you look at the way that they operated, use the United States back in the day. A lot of the core infrastructure that was built there was built by private sector. Government is an umpire, really. Sort of creates the framework that allows private sector easily plug in, right? Because if you think about the reason why we would need quick fixes and quick shows of workings, it's because government, 4 years, 8 years, you don't have enough time to bridge some of these gaps, right? If you're going to build infrastructure, local government by local government, sometimes town by town, That's not a government. That will take a very long time. So was there ever a time we got this right? Yes. If we think about the 60s, and I keep saying this, right? 50s, 60s, our golden era of agriculture. We had a system that worked. You had farm settlements, which the regional governments would work to create farm settlements. The farm settlements obviously would encourage everything pre-production, right? Down to production. So farmers were able to just plug into that. Then you had the produce buyers. Produce buyers were people who were licensed to buy at sometimes set prices, in the same way you have an oil lifting license now. Now, because those prices were predetermined, the government then had marketing boards. The marketing boards would then work with the produce buyers, who were either processors or traders, to sell that commodity locally within the continent or internationally. The government then set the marketing board offices in different countries. So you go to London, they had one, etc. End to end. So you could just easily come and invest and plug in and understand that the entire value chain was set. That's why it worked. To a great extent, that was also a system somewhat adopted or inherited from the British, who originally set up. But we know how the story goes. Following oil, a lot of these things sort of broke away. And then we tried to force another system that didn't really work with the way that we are, with our own idiosyncrasies, if you like.
So if we were to maybe start getting serious in that sense, not just on paper to show the workings, you've said there's a lot of burden on government, but it's understandable. You could start your business now, lots of ideas, you've invested a lot, and just one tiny policy, it just messes everything up. And you can't do anything because government is, they say, next to God, right? So as much as we place a burden on government, it's understandable because government sets the tone. I mean, investors will look to government policies.
Of course.
Are you consistent? Can we trust this government before they come in?
They're the umpire.
Before they commit their resources. So if we must get serious, because again, you have a lot of private sector people who have loose money. They want to put money into something. Some would say, well, if you trust private sector, I mean, they want to make profit, right? So sometimes they don't care. They just want to make profit. So if the rice has to be 100,000, it will be 100,000. In fact, I think it was one of the billionaires in Nigeria was telling hoarders that you have to support in the price of rice will keep coming down.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard that.
BUA.
BUA. Yeah. He said that. So there's also private sector people who seem to be principalities and powers in their sense. So maybe you speak to what you have been able to do in that sector to sort of transform things, and are you seeing the results?
Definitely. So, you know, at Zebra, we started off building mid-scale food processing factories, a network of that. And when we built the factories, like most people who went into the processing side of agriculture, you realize there's a challenge with consistency of supply and consistency of quality. So to bridge that, we started setting up micro-aggregation centers to feed our factories.
For which of the produces is it?
Specifically
tomatoes?
Vegetable oil processing and animal feed. So soybean, oil palm, things of that nature. So when we set up these aggregation centers, we noticed that other factories around us in the industrial cluster were trying to tap into our aggregated supply. So we thought, why don't we spin this off and make it a unit on its own? And so that birthed Zebra Crop Bank. Now Zebra Crop Bank operates in seven states at the moment, including Cameroon. And what we found is that there's an impact assessment organization, a global impact assessment organization called 60 Decibels. So they did an assessment on us. And over 97% of the farmers who were using our services were sort of accessing a similar service for the first time. And what do? So we basically create micro solar powered storage houses directly at farm gates. Small units. The smallest about 40 tons, and then it goes all the way up, depending on the needs of the community.
Give us an example of a location and how is that making food cheaper there? Is that helping the farmers? Something we can relate to. So maybe a location and how that is really materially transforming.
For instance, we have one of them in Oshongo in Benue State. Yeah. So what you find is that not only are farmers able to store in our facilities, they're able to sell directly at farm gates. And you find that most farmers want to sell and not to store. But then when we convince them to sell half, store half, and in a couple of weeks, months, when the price is higher, we alert them and say, the price of this commodity is X. It was Y yesterday. Do you want to sell, yes or no? And then they can sell still to us. You find that the next season, they produce more. Because now they're sure that everything that they're producing is going to sell. But then farmers don't have staying power, which is why, unless they're big and organized, smaller ones don't have staying power because they're living hand to mouth. So they want to sell. So what we then did is offer credit. So with your stored commodity, we can give you 70% of the value of that commodity, right? So your commodity is the collateral. So when they then had some cash in their hands, they're more willing to store and then sell later when the price is higher, making even more money, and then encourage to produce even more the next season.
But how is that different from hoarding?
So from hoarding for the farmers, I mean, the truth is everybody's trying to make money. Farmers can't sort of live on the whims of, I mean, the reason that farmers are poor, A, they don't sell for the actual market price. They sell at the middleman price. And you know in Nigeria, there are three prices. There's the price, not that middlemen are bad, by the way.
It's business.
It's business. Right. There's the price that middlemen or agents, when they take trucks to the communities, buy at. That's price one. They sell that price to smaller scale they sell that commodity to smaller scale processors or export agents at a slightly higher price.
So they mark up maybe 10% or so?
Sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's a lot more, depending on how the environment is looking.
Right.
And then you have the price that it leaves Nigeria at, right? That's the international price. Obviously, you don't really expect to get that here for all commodities. But the farmer gets the lowest price. What we then do is offer the farmer that processor price. So they are quite aware how much the processor is buying this commodity at, and they're quite aware what our margins are because we're definitely trying to make some money, right? So the farmer makes more. If the farmer knows that they can make more, they're incentivized to produce more. The farmer has to make profits. That's the truth. So if you produce enough to sell a significant volume and save a significant volume for maybe when it's off season, why not?
It's very interesting. And these are things I wish we're really sitting down to think about. And maybe you could speak to, government support or, government backing in that sense, saying, because you hear in other climes that the government will visit farmers. And I don't want to try to mention or compare. They'll visit farmers and say, what do you need? Like, what do you need? So we see that you're doing this. How can we help? Because they understand that, all of your policies, in fact, your re-election is really dependent on how much food people have on the table to say, this government is working. So they literally go to farmers and people in that value chain to ask, what do you need? So I don't know if you've had that kind of conversation, if the farmers around you have had that kind of conversation at the state, even local government, state and the federal level.
I think so. I think that in the recent past, some government policies on paper made sense. I'll give an example. The Agro program made sense, right? A lot of factories come up and the problem is source of raw material. So the Agro program was, you establish a factory, the government will work with you to provide funding for the farmers to produce in significant enough volumes to make your factory viable. That made sense. The application, on the other hand, was problematic. Some people say corruption, but then there's also a systemic problem. Because how do you guarantee that the farmers sell to you at the price that was agreed after getting the support? And you can't do that if you don't have farm gate infrastructure. How are you going to do that? How are you going to aggregate those commodities? You have let's use Abuja as an example. You have your factory in Maitama. The production is happening in Kuje or Kwali. There's no infrastructure there. You have some agents that every once in a while go there and you're hoping on the good graces of the farmers that the commodity will come to you at the agreed price. How is that going to happen? But if there's infrastructure, so okay, this is my storage partner. This is my offtake or my primary processing partner. So the commodities come out. Farmers sun dry sometimes for 2 to 3 weeks, some of these commodities. You have the infrastructure on field that where the farming is happening. It comes out of the ground, goes into the facility, solar power drying or cleaning, whatever, bagged and stored. And then the trucking gets it to you. That sort of structure is what you would need to make it viable. So we didn't have the end-to-end. I think that was one of the problems, alongside maybe corruption.
Well, it's good that we're having this conversation. I am tempted to speak about this rice, because rice is at the center of any conversation about food in Nigeria. So the price is coming down as a result of importation.
Yes.
So is that our solution, really? So if anything is expensive, just try to import it.
I think it's a short-term solution, which in itself poses problems. You have a lot of companies that have shut down in recent times because of these importations. Not rice and maize in particular have been very hard. How much is a bag of fertilizer? You're buying fertilizer maybe 70,000, 80,000. You're now being forced to sell a bag of your commodity for like 40K. How you can't, it's just not tenable, right? And I understand why the government would do that, because Nigeria needs to feed, but there also needs to be, or needed, maybe there is, to be a plan in place. I understand it was supposed to be 150 days, I think, that this would last. Well, let's see how long it lasts. But the long-term implications or the mid-term implications are very severe because, first of all, a lot of people had invested a lot of money between, we included, between last summer and now, right? Predicting almost what the market is going to be saying. Yes, you have the hoarders, but you also have the processors that set up. You have the millers.
Right.
Millers are struggling right now.
It's almost like a tussle between the consumers and the business people, the farmers right now. Everybody obviously has their interests. They want to make profit in buying it at a lower price or at least selling at a profitable price. The onus is on government now to find a middle ground. So it's a win-win situation. But it's very interesting that this conversation is happening and you're thinking innovatively to solve these challenges. So we should do the very best.
So.
We should do the very best. This is actually a very, very touchy issue. So we should do the best and all of the support that you need from government. We hope that you get it.
Thank you.
We'll be speaking with Buffy Okeke Ojudu, CEO of Zebra Agro Industries. Buffy is your name, right?
Buffy is my name. It's
not just because of the look.
No, it's not just because of the look, but I mean, I'll take it too.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We'll take a quick break now. Now that we've talked about food, I know a lot of people are hungry, but there's more to come for you on this breakfast show. It's a whole buffet. Stay with us.